And this year, on that birthday party, so we go to a hotel room, we got some girls, and we have drugs and everything. And we're in there, and the police came in, and they found us in there, found the girls, and they found drugs.
Michael Irvin, one of the NFL's greatest receivers, standing in his training camp room covered in blood. Not his blood, his teammates' blood. Blood everywhere. On his hands, his clothes, the walls. And in that moment, he was absolutely certain of one thing. He had just murdered a man. But here's what makes this story even more chilling. That stabbing? It wasn't even the worst thing Michael Irvin did during his career. Not by a long shot. And there's one person who saw it all firsthand. Someone who witnessed the full scope of the chaos, the violence, the self-destruction that nearly claimed the life of an NFL icon. That person is Deion Sanders. At 6 a.m. one morning in 2001, Sanders made a phone call that would change everything. 20 to 30 minutes of raw, tearful conversation between two friends. What Sanders said during that call pulled Irvin back from an abyss so dark, even those closest to him didn't fully understand how close he was to the edge. This is the story you've never heard in full, the dark truth about Michael Irvin's descent into violence and addiction, told through the eyes of the man who refused to let his friend destroy himself. And I'm warning you now, what you're about to discover is going to change everything you thought you knew about America's team. Let's go back to where it all began. Dallas.
And then March 5th is my birthday, and so I have one big party, hang out, have fun, and then that's it. I'm starting back training, and then I didn't do anything. I was just training football, and I would do this every year. And this year, on that birthday party, so we go to a hotel room, we got some girls, and we have drugs and everything, and we're in there, and the police came in, and they found us in there, found the girls, and they found drugs. And
Texas, mid-1990s. The Cowboys had just done something extraordinary. They'd won 3 Super Bowl championships in 4 years. Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin, the triplets. They weren't just winning games, they were dominating the entire league, and they knew it. But success did something dangerous to these men. It created an atmosphere where they genuinely believed, they were above the law, untouchable, immune to consequences. And Michael Irvin? He became the living embodiment of this toxic mindset. Now you might be wondering, how does a championship team spiral into chaos? The answer is surprisingly simple. It starts with one house, one address, 115 Dorset Drive in Irving, Texas. They called it the White House. And no, that's not some clever metaphor. It was
a couple weeks before, I said, hey man, I think we've been infiltrated. You need to shut down the White House. And I said to Leon, this is not a movie. This is not a movie. So we're not shutting down the White House.
An actual rented residence that served as ground zero for the Cowboys' party culture. But here's the truly insane part. This house was located just 100 yards from the team's practice facility. You could literally stand in the backyard and see where these guys were supposed to be training. Think about that for a second. These players could finish practice, walk across a field, and step directly into what was essentially a 72-hour party that never ended. The White House had 5 rooms, each one dedicated to different vices. One room for marijuana, another for cocaine, another for ecstasy, and rooms specifically designed for sexual activities. Michael Irvin ran this operation like a military commander. He even called himself the president of the White House. Every single week, from Friday after practice until Sunday night, this place hosted 10 to 20 players and 20 to 50 women. We're talking escorts, strippers recruited from local...
And Everett was the new guy. Man, I'm working and we messing with Everett, And Big E and the guys, they started messing with him. You can't let that little receiver mess, dude. And everybody, oh man, over here, cause we were trying to get, okay. And then Everett, cause we had drinks, he get up, dude, to be truthful, and I'm gonna let people know, I was getting my ass kicked. This big old joker was whooping my butt.
Establishments and fans who somehow found their way in. The parties were funded by player contributions, with Irvin fronting costs from his massive NFL salary. You have to understand something about Michael Irvin. This wasn't some random guy who stumbled into success. Irvin grew up in the projects of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He clawed his way out of poverty through sheer talent and an unbreakable will to win. When he got drafted 11th overall by Dallas in 1988, He arrived with the kind of swagger that made people either love.
I should never have grabbed the scissors, but I was in fight or flight mode, you know what I mean? And dude, I went back to, I went back to my room right after that, and there's blood everywhere, blood all over me. And Big Cat came in and he said, man.
Him or hate him. But even back at the University of Miami, there were warning signs. On his very first day as a freshman, Irvin got into it at the training table. There was this massive offensive lineman who bullied everyone, making freshmen eat last. Irvin's response? He smashed a food tray across the guy's head. His coach, Jimmy Johnson, called him into the office immediately. Irvin thought he was getting sent home before his college career even started. But
He said, Michael, you know, he said, I know the severity of what would happen if the truth got out. And he said, man, I don't want to take you away from your kids.
Johnson saw something in him. That same intensity that made Irvin dangerous also made him great. When Johnson became the Cowboys' head coach and brought Irvin to Dallas, he kept a tight rein on his star receiver. Even during the offseason, those voluntary workouts were mandatory. You could miss them, sure, but you better believe you wouldn't be on the team much longer. Everything changed in 1994 when Johnson left and Barry Switzer took over. Switzer's coaching philosophy was different, way more permissive. And with Johnson's discipline removed, the Cowboys players were finally free to indulge their worst impulses. That's when the White House really took off, and Irvin was its architect. March 4th, 1996. This was the date that everything started unraveling. Every year, Irvin had the same routine. Big party on his birthday, March 5th. Hang out, have fun, then get back to training. That was the plan. But this year, something went wrong. Terribly wrong. Irvin rented a hotel room, got some girls, some drugs. Just another night in the life of an untouchable NFL superstar, right? Except the police showed up. They found 10.3 grams of cocaine, over an ounce of marijuana, drug paraphernalia, and 2 women identified as escorts. But the real story wasn't just the arrest. It was how Irvin got caught. See, a guy named Dennis Padini, Irvin's former aide, had been secretly filming him. Actually filming him purchasing cocaine, and then Padini sold that footage to a local TV station. Here's the wildest part. A couple of weeks before the arrest, Deion Sanders called Irvin. Hey man, I think we've been infiltrated. You need to shut down the White House. Sanders was warning his friend, trying to protect him. But Irvin's response reveals everything about where his head was at that moment. This is not a movie. We're not shutting down the White House. The arrogance, the denial. Even with a teammate warning him that everything was about to collapse, Irvin refused to believe his empire could be brought down. Irvin ended up pleading no contest to felony cocaine possession. The punishment? A $10,000 fine, 800 hours of community service, and a 5-game NFL suspension. For most people, that would be rock bottom, a wake-up call, time to change. But for Michael Irvin, this was just the beginning. July 29th, 1998. Training camp in Wichita Falls, Texas. It started as a normal day. Players getting haircuts, relaxing between practices. Nobody could have predicted what was about to happen. Nobody could have known that within hours, one of the most infamous incidents in NFL history would unfold. Everett McIver was new to the Cowboys, a 318-pound offensive guard trying to establish himself on the team. Irvin, the veteran superstar, had made it his business to educate rookies about the team's hierarchy. This was standard stuff. Locker room hazing, messing with the new guy. Completely normal. Until it wasn't. They were messing with McIver, giving him a hard time. Everyone was having drinks. The situation escalated. And here's where Irvin admits something that most people don't know. To be truthful, I was getting my ass kicked. This big old joker was whooping my butt. Think about that. Michael Irvin, one of the fiercest competitors in NFL history, was losing a fight. And for a man who had spent his entire life refusing to back down, refusing to accept defeat, this was unbearable. The decision he made in the next 10 seconds would haunt him for the rest of his life. Irvin grabbed the barber's scissors, and he stabbed Everett McIver in the neck. The blade created a 2-inch gash that required 20 stitches.
My first day, I'm just a freshman. I get into it at the training table. First of all, I'd never seen this kind of food before, you know, at the meal table. And we had this big offensive lineman. And this dude just bullied everybody, right? And the freshmen have to eat last. I took the tray, smashed it across his head.
But here's the truly terrifying part. The wound came dangerously close to McIver's carotid artery. If the scissors had gone just a fraction of an inch deeper, Everett McIver would have died right there in that training camp barbershop. Blood poured from the wound as teammates scrambled to stop the bleeding. The scene was absolute chaos. And Irvin? He ran back to his room, convinced he had just murdered a man. "I went back to my room right after that," Irvin recalled years later. "There's blood everywhere. Blood all over me." Imagine that moment. You're Michael Irvin. You've built this incredible career, climbed out of poverty, become a champion. And now, you're sitting in a hotel room covered in another man's blood, absolutely certain your life is over, certain you're going to prison for murder, certain you'll never see your kids grow up. But what happened next? That's even more shocking than the stabbing itself. Everett McIver refused to press charges. Let that sink in for a moment. This man had been stabbed in the neck by his teammate. He nearly died, and he chose not to send Irvin to prison. Years later, Irvin shared what McIver told him. "Michael, I know the severity of what would happen if the truth got out. Man, I don't want to take you away from your kids like you almost took me away from mine." That's grace. That's forgiveness on a level most people can't even comprehend. McIver understood that Irvin's conviction wouldn't just end his football career. It would devastate his family. So he made a choice. Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, reportedly paid an undisclosed settlement to ensure McIver's silence. No criminal charges were filed. The incident was covered up, swept under the rug, and Michael Irvin's career continued. But for Deion Sanders, watching all of this unfold was becoming unbearable. Sanders had joined the Cowboys in 1995 after Irvin recruited him with a record $35 million deal. Their friendship had been built on competition and mutual respect. But now Sanders was watching his friend spiral into something dark and dangerous. See, Sanders was different. Yeah, he had the flamboyant primetime persona, the flashy personality, the showmanship. But underneath all that, Sanders was grounded in faith and family values that stood in stark contrast to Irvin's reckless behavior. Sanders would show up at White House gatherings occasionally during his time with...
Back in Dallas, you had the White House, which is, kind of like basically a brothel, if nothing else.
Yeah, and basically, that's what it was. And that's what we did, and we did have an extra house, and after just thinking I didn't want to go to hotels and all the problems that caused.
The Cowboys from 1995 to 1996. But he was always on the periphery, never diving deep into the excess. His evangelical Christian faith created boundaries that ultimately saved him from the worst consequences. And there came a point where Sanders decided he couldn't just stand by and watch.
So we thought, or I thought, that maybe I should get some guys together and we just buy an extra house, and we did. We had an extra house. It was right around the corner. You go in the backyard and you can see the practice field. So we practiced right there.
Anymore. There was one time I was out there wilding out bad, man, Irvin remembered. Just crazy, acting crazy. And Deion showed up at the house. He said, "Hey man, enough. This got to stop." Deion bowed up like, "Let's go right now. We're going to fight right here, right now." Let me paint this picture for you. Deion Sanders, one of the greatest athletes in NFL history, shows up at Michael Irvin's house ready to physically fight his own friend to stop him from destroying himself. That's not casual concern.
Then come on over to Dallas after the first go-round.
Oh, no, that was me. I recruited Deion. He said, I've been talking to his people. I said, all right, you talk to his people, I'm gonna talk to him, I'm gonna call him.
Right on the source.
Right. So I called him.
Irvin's recruitment of Sanders wasn't just about football. It was about bringing his friend into an empire he had built.
So I told him, I said, hey, listen, I told him I'm gonna set something up for you when you come on in. You come in town, I'm gonna set something up. Then I gotta set this thing up at the club called Guantanamo Raj. Help me get Deion here.
That's the kind of love that's willing to get uncomfortable, to risk the friendship itself, to save someone's life. But the violence and chaos weren't even the scariest part of Michael Irvin's life during this period. In 1996, a Dallas police officer named Johnny Hernandez hired a hitman to kill Irvin for $30,000. Why? Because Hernandez had learned about Irvin's affair with his fiancée. The hitman turned out to be an undercover officer, and Hernandez was sentenced to 12 years in prison. But think about that for a second. Irvin's behavior.
And what bugs me is, as I'm standing here today, I promise you, God whispered it to me. Don't go to that hotel room. I promise you I heard it. I heard it as clearly as we are talking here today. He whispered it to me, and I went anyway.
Had become so reckless, so destructive, that people were literally trying to have him murdered. This wasn't just about parties anymore. This wasn't just about bad decisions. Michael Irvin had become a walking time bomb, capable of explosive violence at any moment, operating in a world so dangerous that his life was actively threatened. October 10, 1999, Philadelphia Eagles Stadium. Michael Irvin's career ended in a single, devastating moment. A routine tackle resulted in a career-ending neck injury. He was diagnosed with spinal stenosis, a narrowing of the spinal column that had gone undetected throughout his entire career. Deion Sanders was there. The cameras captured him praying over his injured friend, and that image symbolized something deeper than just teammates supporting each other. It represented the genuine care beneath their public personas, the brotherhood that had been forged through years of competition and chaos. For Sanders, watching Irvin's career end in such dramatic fashion was a reminder of how fragile football really is, and how important the relationships built along the way truly are. But if anyone thought retirement would bring peace to Michael Irvin's life, they were dead wrong. If anything, losing football.
And then a couple weeks later, live on the news. And so Jerry, I was in meetings and Jerry called me. He called me out of the meetings in his office. He said that the story's breaking about this extra house you guys have right around the corner here.
The one constant that had provided structure and purpose would send him spiraling even deeper into darkness. March 1st, 2000, just months after his forced retirement, Michael Irvin was arrested again for cocaine possession in Irving, Texas. It was a routine traffic stop. Police found 3.5 grams of cocaine in Irvin's Lincoln Navigator. For most people, that would be bad enough. But Irvin was still on probation from his 1996 conviction. This arrest meant he was facing up to 7 years in prison. The image of the once mighty playmaker, reduced to a common drug arrest in a parking lot, represented the complete collapse of everything he had built. Without football to provide structure, without the discipline and schedule and purpose that had defined his entire adult life, Irvin was free-falling into an abyss. And that's when Deion Sanders made the most important phone call of Michael Irvin's life. Early 2001, approximately 6 a.m. Sanders was in Atlanta. He'd been sensing through mutual friends that Irvin was at a breaking point, that something was very, very wrong. So he picked up the phone. The call lasted 20 to 30 minutes, and what Sanders said during that conversation would change everything. "Man, look, I don't know what it was or whatever it is, but let's fix it. I love you, my brother." Irvin later described the call as tearful and raw. "It breaks my heart," he said. "That's what made me scared." But here's the awful truth that Deion Sanders understood about Michael Irvin. A truth that went deeper than the drugs, deeper than the violence, deeper than all the arrests and controversies. Sanders knew that Irvin's behavior wasn't just about addiction or anger, it was about emptiness. You see, Michael Irvin had spent his entire life building toward one goal, becoming a great football player. Everything else, the parties, the excess, the violence, those were just ways to fill the void when football wasn't enough. And when football was taken away completely, that void became unbearable. Sanders understood that Irvin was struggling with pain that couldn't be healed with money or fame or even friendship. It required something deeper, a fundamental transformation. That phone call sparked Irvin's Christian conversion. In early 2001, he joined the Potter's House in Dallas under Pastor T.D. Jakes. Years later, Irvin reflected, "Turned my life over to Christ with help from Pastor T.D. Jakes and Deion. Took 40 years to realize God's hand." The charges from his 2000 arrest were eventually dismissed in November 2001 due to procedural issues. But the spiritual transformation that began with Sanders' 6 a.m. phone call proved more lasting than any legal resolution. If you think this story ends with Irvin finding redemption and living happily ever after, I need to be honest with you. Life doesn't work that way. The shadows of Irvin's past weren't finished with him yet. His broadcasting career began in earnest in 2002 with ESPN. He was articulate, passionate, and brought genuine insight to NFL coverage. But controversies continued to follow him like ghosts he couldn't shake. In 2007, a woman accused Irvin of sexual assault at a Florida hotel. The accusation led to a civil lawsuit and a $100 million defamation countersuit from Irvin. The case was settled confidentially in 2011, but it demonstrated that Irvin's past would continue to haunt him. In 2017, another sexual assault allegation emerged in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The Broward County State Attorney's Office declined to file charges due to insufficient evidence, citing video evidence that contradicted the accuser's claims. But perhaps the most public test came in February 2023, during Super Bowl 57 week in Phoenix. A female employee at the Renaissance Phoenix downtown hotel accused Irvin of making lewd comments and unwanted physical contact during a brief lobby interaction. The allegation led to his immediate suspension from NFL Network and ESPN. Irvin missed covering the Super Bowl, one of the biggest events in sports. Irvin's response was raw and emotional. He filed a $100 million defamation lawsuit against Marriott, and in a public statement, he said something that revealed just how deep the wounds from his past still ran. "This sickens me. This sickens me because in this great country, this takes me back to a time where a white woman would accuse a black man of something, and they would take a bunch of guys that were above the law, run in the barn, put a rope around his foot, and drag him through the mud and hang him by the tree." The comparison to lynching was controversial, but it revealed the accumulated pain of decades of scrutiny and judgment, the trauma that these repeated allegations had inflicted on him. When surveillance video was finally released in March 2023, it showed a brief, seemingly cordial conversation between Irvin and the employee. The video contradicted many of the allegations and became a vindication for Irvin. "Had to sue the hotel," Irvin explained, "and then after the judge said you got to show him the tape, they still wouldn't turn it over. What saved me was those 3 dudes that I went and took a pic with because they woke up the next morning, saw all the news, and they were like, 'That didn't happen.'" The case was settled confidentially in September 2023, with Irvin returning to NFL Network. But the damage had been done. Another controversy, another headline, another reminder that no matter how much he changed, no matter how much he grew, the past was always one accusation away from destroying everything again. And through all of it, Deion Sanders stood by his friend. Sanders publicly supported Irvin during the crisis, tweeting, "Prime stands with Playmaker. False accusations hit hard. Know your worth." This unwavering support speaks to something that goes beyond friendship. Sanders has seen his friend at his absolute worst, covered in a teammate's blood, spiraling into drug addiction, facing prison time. And still, Sanders believes in Irvin's capacity for good. May 2025, Deion Sanders underwent surgery for bladder cancer and blood clots. He lost 20 to 25 pounds and had to step away from his coaching duties with the Colorado Buffaloes. For a man who had always been the picture of health and vitality, this medical emergency was a sobering reminder of mortality. Michael Irvin immediately dropped everything. He made multiple visits to Sanders' Texas ranch, sharing humorous videos to lift his friend's spirits. This wasn't obligation. This wasn't repaying a debt. This was genuine love between 2 men who had been through hell together and come out the other side. At the Big 12 Media Days in July 2025, a recovering Sanders publicly thanked his friend. The moment was captured on video and witnessed by hundreds of media members. "Where's Mike Irvin? Playmaker. Man, I love you to life. Don't make me cry." Sanders praised Irvin as the real deal, while slamming what he called vultures, who had exploited his illness. This moment revealed the true nature of their relationship. Here was Deion Sanders, one of the most confident and self-assured athletes in history, openly expressing his love and gratitude for Michael Irvin in front of the world. No pretense, no machismo, just 2 friends who had saved each other's lives in different ways. So what is the awful truth that Deion Sanders knows about Michael Irvin? It's not just about the drugs. It's not just about the violence or the stabbing or the arrests. Those are symptoms, not the disease. The awful truth is that Michael Irvin's journey from poverty to NFL stardom came with a psychological cost he's still paying today. The same intensity that lifted him out of the projects, The same refusal to accept defeat that made him a champion also made him incapable of backing down from confrontation. It made him turn to excess to fill the emptiness inside. It made him violent when he felt disrespected. Sanders saw something that others missed. He saw a man struggling not just with addiction or anger, but with a fundamental emptiness that no amount of success could fill. And Sanders knew that the only way to save his friend was to love him enough to intervene, to call him at 6 a.m., to show up at his house ready to fight, to stand by him when everyone else had written him off. Today, at 59 years old, Michael Irvin continues his broadcasting career. He mentors young players, sharing his story as a cautionary tale and a testimony to the possibility of redemption. And his friendship with Deion Sanders remains as strong as ever. In September 2025, they were still connecting, still supporting each other, still maintaining the brotherhood that had been forged in the fires of the Cowboys' most turbulent years. Because here's what Deion Sanders understands that many people don't. Redemption is possible for anyone willing to do the work. Transformation is real, and sometimes the darkest truths lead to the most powerful changes. Michael Irvin's story isn't just about a football player who made terrible mistakes. It's about a man who battled demons that nearly destroyed him, found the strength to change with the help of a friend who refused to give up on him, and continues fighting those demons every single day. The White House is long gone. The parties are over. The violence has stopped. But the struggle continues. And the friendship that saved Michael Irvin's life? That's still here, stronger than ever. That's the awful truth. And it's also the beautiful truth, because sometimes the worst things we've done don't define us. Sometimes redemption is possible. Sometimes a friend who loves you enough to fight for you makes all the difference. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about second chances and the power of friendship, make sure you check out the other videos on the screen. Because everyone deserves to know that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope. There's always a way back, and sometimes all it takes is one friend who refuses to let you fall.